So strong showing in South Africa over the period, not quite as strong as showing in the UK, and it seems there were a few hurdles to overcome in that market.
Yes, I think our results are a tale of two countries. Very strong results in South Africa, driven by strong demand and efficiencies and expansion, and weaker results in the UK, but primarily as a result of the poor economy there and some structural changes that we've seen in the UK.
I suppose it just illustrates then the benefits of diversification and having two very strong portfolios in two different countries.
Yes, absolutely, and we still see the UK as a very strong platform for future growth. As we discussed this morning in our presentation, the demand for healthcare and the demographic shifts are very positive. The NHS is not coping with that demand. Waiting lists are going out, and with the belt tightening exercises that are undergoing at the moment in the UK, we think that the private sector stands to benefit as it assists in treating NHS patients.
So while you've been building NHS patients, it's really the private patients that have been under pressure due to the recession in the UK, is that right?
That's exactly right. In fact, for many years, the private medical insurance has been reasonably resilient, but this year we saw a decline of about 4.9 to 5% in the market. We've doubled the amount of NHS. When we first started in 2006, we were treating probably 2.5% to 5% of patients were government patients. Today, 25% of patients are choosing to come to general health care.
Wow.
So it's a very significant increase.
How profitable are those NHS patients compared to your private patients though?
They're a lot less profitable. They come at a national tariff, and therefore the contribution at the margin line is significantly lower. And we've been traditionally mainly a private organisation, but we are still looking to become more efficient in treating government patients, and we think there's a long way to go there.
Of course, some of the other obstacles perhaps in the UK, VAT going up. You've got the white paper for healthcare there at the same time. But you also had a deferred tax release of 155 million rand, so that helping a little bit during the period. Yes,
so we saw corporate tax coming down to 26%. From 27, and that was significant, and that helped us. But at the same time, we've seen VAT go up now from 17.5% to 20%, and that was a £4 million hit because we were unable to recover the input tax.
How about changing regulations in the UK markets? How are you positioned for those going forward?
Stephen, I think that the UK has always been a highly regulated market, and we've chosen to operate in that. So, for instance, regulation in this country about the Office of Standards and Clinical Standards, we welcome, because we've always worked under an independent regulator of both the public and private sector. So it's a highly regulated market, and we've worked well in that market.
And changing regulations in the South African market is obviously something to look forward to.
Yes. So there is a number of regulations in the market here that we're still awaiting government's response to. They've put out on multi-party negotiations, on international benchmarking of drugs. We think that'll be positive. We'll be able to purchase drugs a lot cheaper if that happens, because at the moment we're purchasing drugs at least 35 to 50% higher than our colleagues in the UK.
How about investments in your South African operations? I see there are a number of new hospitals, or you've been refurbishing some, building some new hospitals as well. I think there's one out in Midrand that's due to open up in the next couple of months. What sorts of investments are you making for the future in the South African operations, with a view that we are going to see big changes to healthcare in South Africa?
So we're investing very significantly in the South African market, about 1.1 billion rand this year, the most we've ever invested. And pleasingly, most of that, about 60% of that, is on expansion, and the remainder on refurbishments and replacements. And I think if you looked at Netcare's numbers in the last 3 to 4 years, a lot of that was really refurbishment and replacement. So we are on an expansion drive. We're opening this hospital, Waterfall, 132 beds in July. We've got our PPP in Lesotho opening, 425 beds, in partnership with the government of Lesotho, and we have a whole pipeline of other projects.
And the demand for this private healthcare in South Africa, you're not going to oversupply the markets, is that the demand there for all those beds?
We definitely believe the demand is there, but having said that, at a tertiary level, we believe that the real focus should be on primary healthcare as well. And that's the unique feature of Netcare, is that we operate both at the primary and at the tertiary. But certainly in terms of NHI, for an appropriate level of healthcare, we think there's much to be delivered at the primary healthcare level.
Well, you mentioned the investments in Lesotho and your public-private partnership there really, I think you were using as a test case really for whether to take this further. Do you see this as a model that could be implemented more in South Africa, particularly if we do have the NHI coming in?
Well, we certainly hope so, but we're getting very positive signals from our colleagues in SADC and other countries to the north of SADC, because here for the very first time the private sector is putting its money where its mouth is. We're not just building, operating and transferring. We're employing doctors, we're employing nurses, which we can't employ doctors in this country, and on top of that we're responsible for the clinical outcomes. And it's very early days, but having operated the primary clinics for now a year, our outcomes are very encouraging.
Of course, you have been bringing your debt down little by little. If you want to have all this expansion into the region, it is going to need more capital investment.
It may, but Stephen, you raise an important point there, is that our debt in South Africa is the lowest it's been since we made the acquisition. So our balance sheet is looking very strong at the moment, but we don't have any acquisitions in the pipeline at all. It's all expansion.
Prospects for the second half, are you starting to see a turnaround in that UK market? Are people starting to dig into their pockets again for private healthcare?
I think our results are lagging where the UK market is, because I think we lagged the recession in the sense that we produced very resilient results last year, and now we're showing the impact. So I think there are green shoots that are more leading indicators of that market, but I think it's a good 12 to 18 months before we see PMI coming back, private medical insurance, self-pay might come back earlier because of the NHS. But we're not concerned. This is a structural change that we'll adapt to.
And you do have that cushion of the NHS in the meantime anyway.
Very much so.